A very warm welcome to you in News9 Mediaverse, and you are watching On Point with me. There has been yet another terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch district. An army convoy got ambushed, leading to a fierce encounter with terrorists in the area. Additional forces were rushed in as the encounter raged on. As many as 16 security personnel and 7 civilians have been killed in this region so far in 2023. In fact, these two districts account for 50% of the terror-related deaths in 2023. What explains the spurt in terror incident in Jammu region of late? Before I introduce my guest, let me take you some data points. And these data will tell you that yes, the incidents of terror have gone down in the Kashmir Valley, but then it has seen a surge in Poonch and Rajouri. On this issue, I am joined by Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain and in studio my executive editor Aditya Raj Kaul. So before I go to both of them, these park-based terrorists are seen stepping up operations Rajouri and Poonch. Poonch and Rajouri has accounted for 50% of the terror-related deaths in 2023 in Jammu and Kashmir. But most important of all, Aditya, before I go to General, why has this happened? This ambush. What's the latest?
Well, first, what I can tell you, Karthikeya, is that this is a very terrible news that has come in. This happened earlier this afternoon, where we came to know that since last night, there was an intelligence-based operation that was underway in the Surankot area in the Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir, where the Indian Army and the JNK police had launched an operation to flush out terrorists. And while the encounter was underway near the DKG road in Surankot, Poonch, we had a convoy, an army convoy moving in that area, which was ambushed by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists. And initial reports indicated that one truck was attacked, but now I can confirm that a truck and an army gypsy both were attacked. There are photographs of army gypsy that have just come in that clearly indicate blood lying all across that gypsy and all the window panes of that gypsy completely shattered. We are also getting unconfirmed reports right now that at least 3 Indian Army personnel are injured in this attack. Casualties are being feared, but the Indian Army or the Northern Command have not confirmed as to what the situation really is, because the operation is still underway, the encounter is underway. You've rightly pointed out, Karthikeya, that in the last couple of years, or at least 3 years, there's been increased activity of Pakistan-sponsored terrorists in Rajouri and Poonch areas. In fact, General Atta Hasnain would be able to explain in greater detail why this has happened. He has written extensively on the Pir Panchal and what activities are going across in the upper reaches of Jammu. But what I can also certainly tell you is that at a time when Article 370 has been a mighty...
Is there any information on the casualty injury?
As I said, no confirmation on the casualties. Casualties are being feared, but what I'm learning from my sources in the army is that 3 army personnel are injured. You have to remember that in the last less than 3 years, there are 8 to 10 such attacks that have happened where army vehicles or army jawans have been ambushed, and clearly there are at least 40 or more casualties that have been reported also. The main targets remain the security forces and Indian Army in that region, but also the minority Hindu population in Poonch, Rajouri, Kishtwar have been frequently attacked in that area, and there's been a mission of Pakistan that at a time when it is increasingly difficult for them to operate in the Kashmir Valley, they're trying to relaunch and reinvent their strategy in Rajouri, Poonch belt.
Let me go across to Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain. Sir, your first take on the rise in the terror-related deaths in Poonch and Rajouri. Why, sir?
Thank you, Karthikeya. Thank you for inviting me for your show. And I start by, of course, expressing my very deep regrets for the casualties which have happened. I only hope these are not fatal casualties. The reports which have just been spoken about by Aditya is absolutely right, that the so far information available is that there are 3 injured, maybe seriously injured, and this was an ambush on a reinforcing, you can say it's a QRT or just a reinforcement which was moving in on an operation which was already ongoing in this area on the road between Dera Ki Gali and Bafliaz. Bafliaz is slightly in the depth on the Surankot sector and slightly in the depth, but again in the nape of the Pir Panjal. So your observations at the beginning of this program are absolutely valid. This is the area, and stretching on towards Thana Mandi on the other side of Rajouri, where you find that the maximum operations of Jammu and Kashmir have been focused at the moment. Now, let me just explain this. Article 370 removal had its effect in the valley. Over a period of time, better intelligence, better removal of networks, etc., resulted in a dilution of overall terrorist trends and a concentration towards South Kashmir and further concentration into the Pir Panjal. The similar thing had happened in the Jammu region, Jammu and Poonch region, where you found the concentration moving towards the Pir Panjal direction. So now you've got a corridor of the Pir Panjal in which this concentration of terrorists is. One of the major reasons, as we have ascribed earlier also, is the fact that this area has seen a slight dilution in deployment in the footprint of the army. This is an RR unit on which this has happened, a Rashtra Rifles unit on which this has happened. The RR, a portion of the RR has been moved from here and sent to Ladakh. So there is obviously a reduction in the overall footprint, but I am told that a fair amount of redeployment has been done here by other reserve formations. So it's not as if the area is devoid of troops, but the intent seems to be to revise the terrorism here, because it seems to be as if it is easier to infiltrate here as against the valley, where the grid, counter-infiltration grid, is very, very deeply layered. So it's for these reasons primarily it is happening here. We have not had too much of success here. We have not been able to remove the terrorists who have been operating in the higher reaches of the Pir Panjal. So this is one of the major reasons why this continuously we find these operations taking place.
Is there a specific reason why, General, that the success has not been reached in this area? Is it topography or is it a terrain which is really difficult for any security forces? What are the reasons, sir? Why is it different from the valley?
Well, the valley is much more built up. It is flat, open. It does not have this kind of jungle terrain as you find in the Rajouri Poonch sector. And that is the prime difference from this area. This area is very, very rugged. It is right in the nape of the Pir Panjal. What you find on the valley side is only a small stretch of territory which is broken and forested. It's deeper into the valley. It is much flatter, open areas and things like that. Here, from the line of control, the distance to the Pir Panjal is very short. And as soon as you hit the road, beyond the road, the climb to the Pir Panjal starts. That's where the forested area is. Very rocky, lots of outcrops. And just to remind you and remind our listeners, this is the area where Hill Kaka, where in 2003, we had a virtual fortress of the terrorists which had been established there. They had tried to resist us for quite some time, but a fairly good success had been achieved by the Romeo force of the Rashtra Rifles through an organized formation level operation. But that operation takes time to plan and obviously is much larger than the normal operations which carry on an everyday basis.
But General, do you see any method, any reason why the Indian forces are being attacked in these two sectors?
You see, Karthika, it is important. Pakistan has invested a tremendous amount in the last 34 years in Jammu and Kashmir. And they find that with this whole movement after Article 370 having been removed, you find that in the valley, almost total control has been achieved by the security forces and by the rest of the elements. So there is an attempt to try and keep themselves relevant. All the networks that they have established, they must keep them relevant. If they have to bounce back one day, which is what their dream is, probably what they want to plan for, then they cannot possibly afford to have a situation where they've got no network at all here. And this is the reason why they keep terrorists here, they keep infiltration going here, and whenever an opportunity comes, they try and carry out some kind of an action by which their relevance is realized by the local population. That's the prime purpose of Pakistan's operations here.
You know, it is very unfortunate, you know, in this last session, when the winter session was taking place, even Supreme Court created the pathway of complete normalization of the Kashmir by saying that the nature of the revocation of 370 remains as it is. You know, no one is going to challenge it. It cannot be challenged. It was temporary in nature. but our Kashmir theatre continues to bleed. You know, it's not a question in fancy or it's not a question which I am asking because I do not know the Kashmir theatre, but is it really possible for Indian Army to create a sort of a line that Israelis created in Gaza? So is it possible in that? They breached Gaza, but is it possible to create that sort of a fortification?
See, Kartikeya, there is since 2004, the 1st of July 2004, since then there is a very strong anti-infiltration obstacle system which exists all over Kashmir along the line of control and all along this area, along the line of control from Poonch leading right up to Akhnur, which is essentially to prevent infiltration and to give a line on which to concentrate to prevent infiltration, as far as the army is concerned, a line to concentrate upon. Now, this has been very successful. Let me tell you, in the year 2001, 2002, there used to be thousands of terrorists who used to infiltrate. We used to kill a couple of thousand, but still the numbers who could infiltrate was much higher. So the mathematics of terror were always in favor of the terrorists and of Pakistan. Since then, there has been a total marginalization. This was during the time of General Nirmal Vij when he was the chief, that he had ordered this fence to be made. It's a technical fence with a tremendous amount of surveillance devices. It was actually a facsimile of what existed in Israel on the West Bank and on the Gaza border. And it's been very successful. Unfortunately, in the Rajouri Poonch sector, the manning is not in such deep layers. For one, the distances are not so much. And secondly, the troops aren't that much. In Kashmir, we've got more troops and therefore layered approaches. There's a completely layered system of preventing infiltration. That has stopped infiltration into the Kashmir Valley. But here, unfortunately, that has not happened. Although I still believe that this particular group, which is probably responsible for this action, is not a recently infiltrated group. Because we've seen lots and lots of actions taking place along the Pir Panjal. It is an existing group which has escaped the dragnet somehow so far and is continuously coming back. It's a matter of time, it's a matter of chance. They will be eliminated. There is no doubt about it. But it will obviously take its toll on the army.
And last question to you, sir, before I let go of you. Of late, we have seen that officers are coming under fire. Does that really worry you? Our officers?
See, Kartika, it doesn't really worry me. Our officers are, well, more daring. I know there's a raging debate in the country, in the army and among the veteran community, that our officers are maybe too gung-ho and they are moving up far too far forward to take control of operations. But let me tell you from experience, if you are with troops, there is no way that an officer is going to hold back. He is not going to stay back, whatever may be the drills or whatever may be the teaching. He will be with his men on top. That's how the Indian Army functions. He will be right up in front and he will take charge right in the beginning. As a result, it is not difficult to identify an officer, despite the fact that he does not wear his ranks many times. It's not difficult to identify an officer. And if an officer is identified, obviously anyone will always want to target an officer. Because the moment an officer is targeted, it is assumed that command and control of that subunit will obviously dilute, deteriorate to a great extent, and therefore casualties could be caused more easily.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for joining me. But we now in the show will show you the photographs of the ambush which has been provided to us by Aditya Raj Kaul. But it's time for a short break. I'll be back with more. Thank you, General, for joining me.
The scale of the attack was something that we were surprised at. David Hadley was a double agent. The Americans did not want him to be fully exposed, so all that he probably shared with the Americans was not shared with us in terms of intelligence. If we had that, I'm sure that we would have been able to deal with the situation far better.
this and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
So now the issue is, are these two theatres different? And if these two theatres are different, hasn't there been a thought, a rethink on beefing up our forces in the Poonch and Rajouri sector? Aditya, now if it's a common knowledge that the forces are not much in Rajouri and Poonch sector, is there a rethink in the government that it should be beefed up?
I think there's been a rethink. There have been several unified command meetings that have happened in Jammu and Kashmir to take a stock of this. At the central level in Ministry of Defence as well as at the National Security Council, a lot of discussion, debate, analysis has happened, and there's been a lot of redeployment within internally that has happened as well. As General Hasnain also explained, a lot of these troops from Poonch, Rajouri and the entire Jammu sector have moved into Ladakh as a calculated strategy, and they have been also internal changes where more troops have been brought in from the RR to Rajouri Poonch area. But this is one area where a lot of infiltration is now taking place, and in the last 3 years this has become almost like a stronghold of the terrorists who are moving away from Kashmir and trying to attack and reinvent their strategy towards Rajouri Poonch, attack both the security forces and the minority population. One, to instill fear among the people, to rebuild some kind of roots of terrorism in this particular area, but also lead into some kind of a communal problem between different communities in this area. That's been a long game plan of Pakistan to, in fact, pit religions against each other and particularly target the security forces in ambush. And as General Hasnain also explained, the topography of this area in Rajouri, Poonch, Kishtwar sector is very different from what we see in Kashmir. Kashmir is primarily, flat. But in Rajouri Poonch, what we see is typically a very difficult and treacherous territory.
Okay. Yeah. Before General Meston, these are the photographs which we are playing on our TV screen. And before I come to you, thank you so much for joining me. Let me play out the bite of Arindam Bagchi first, and then I'll join you.
Pakistan's support for terrorism, its support for cross-border attacks is well known. We would hope that other countries also take counter-terrorism seriously.
So going straight to General Meston, we were discussing that the Poonch and Rajouri districts account for 50% of the terror-related deaths in 2023. So this was a team, there was a truck and there was a gypsy which got attacked. Can you tell us that? Do you think that it was an SOP issue, or do you think that these terrorists had better intel on the movement of the Indian Army? And the point which both me and Aditya were discussing was that the Poonch and Rajouri have become new epicenters. It's as if the focus has shifted from the valley.
Karthike, good evening. You have raised very pertinent issue. Actually, exactly as a young company commander in Nashera, Rajouri area, way back in 92, 93, exactly same thing happened. Some specific military operation was going on. As a company commander, I was rushing along with my troops, one gypsy and one vehicle. And suddenly we were fired upon. So what I'm trying to say is, the terrorists were aware that a specific operation, intelligence-based operation was going on since yesterday. There was no doubt. That's a ground reality. Second question now is, when the operation was going on, obviously the army operation, they would have realized that certain reinforcements or some kind of troops are required to, cut off some area or anything. That specific thing I'm not aware. So the fact of the matter is that one gypsy and a truck, army vehicle were going to help this operations progressing. Now what has happened that the terrorist would have known, obviously, that some kind of reinforcement or some kind of a QRT would be on the way, and therefore exactly what they have done is they have sighted, and this is a opportunity ambush what they have done, and therefore they have been successful. And I think probably now latest inputs are that we have had 3 fatal casualties. So this is what they have done. So
Okay.
it was an opportunity ambush.
So can you
and they
explain
have-
the word opportunity ambush?
Yeah, opportunity ambush in this case means, see, the terrorists were already in contact with the ongoing operation since yesterday. And therefore they have hid themselves, and they are obviously, the terrain is so bad over there, so undulating terrain. There are ravines, there are nalas, and such dense foliage that you can just melt away anywhere. So they would have realized that some kind of help in terms of QRT or reinforcement would be en route. And therefore they have repositioned themselves on an axis where the road was passing through, and on a height. And maybe whatever the photographs are, it could have been some bend, because on a bend generally the vehicles slow down, and both vehicles generally tend to bunch up, and that is the time they have sighted themselves well, and they have fired upon. So opportunity ambush means they were expecting something, and they have launched that ambush, and there is a deliberate ambush where they are aware that some routine is going on, and some kind of deliberate movements are going on. So they have got a lot of time to prepare and put this operation. Opportunity means it is just they have realized something may come, and they have sighted themselves, and they would have heard the noise of the vehicle, or since they are sitting at a vantage point. From a vantage point at certain places you can see stretches of road. So certain stretch of road they would have seen some vehicles are coming, and therefore they have repositioned themselves and launched this opportunity ambush. So this is what Karthik and I would describe this operation, and exactly I faced. So that's how I can describe this very, very well. In the same area, of course, that was not in Rajouri, that was in Nowshera area. So this is exactly what the operation has been.
So how would you describe the terrain for a common viewer? Because when people say terrorism, they have a sense of understanding of Kashmir Valley. If you ask anyone, people would completely relate with a terror attack in a urban location, in a city center. But how are Akhnoor, Rajouri and Poonch sectors different from the rest, sir?
Yeah, I would put it across in a manner that let's put the area into two. One is the area north of Pir Panjal, where I can say is the Kashmir Valley, and of course there are areas, the bordering areas of Kupwara and Uri and all these kind of areas. One has also served in these areas. So one is that area where, for example, Kupwara area and Uri area, the mountains are quite high. There is again thick foliage, but once the terrorists have crossed those ranges, then they come down into the Kashmir Valley, and by and large the terrain right from Kupwara city, right up to Sopore, Baramulla and Kashmir Valley, it is all flat. So it is interspersed with houses, built up areas, and terrain is flat. So therefore security forces, it is much easier because the terrain gives you advantage of reaction. You can move security forces, and you have adequate deployment. One is a counter infiltration grid all along the ranges. And thereafter, in the depth also, we have large number of troops deployed. So this is in the north of Pir Panjal, which, if I can put it mildly, is Kashmir Valley. Now coming down to south of Pir Panjal Valley, which includes Poonch, Rajouri.
I would just like you to stop. I'm just stopping you for a minute. I think an important news has come in, which I would like to take from Aditya. Aditya, now formally, what can we say about this terror attack on the Indian Army?
Karthikeya, unfortunately, even as the official statement is awaited from the White Knight Corps and of course the Northern Command, I can confirm through the Indian Army sources now that 3 Indian Army Jawans have succumbed to the critical injuries that they suffered in this terror attack, and there are 3 more Jawans who have been injured and who have been rushed to the hospital. Their state is not exactly clear right now. Efforts are being made to save their lives, but it is confirmed now through our army sources that 3 Indian Army Jawans unfortunately had laid down their life and made the supreme sacrifice for the country. As I said, in last less than 3 years, this is almost the 8th or the 9th attack that has taken place in this Rajouri and Poonch and Kishtewar sector. A very brutal ambush that took place earlier in the afternoon, but to keep in mind, there have been massive CASOs that are underway in this belt, and yesterday evening a coordinated search operation had been started in the same area.
Aditya, any word on whether officers were also part of the casualty?
As I said, the official statement is not clear. The reports only indicate that 3 Jawans have been killed in action and there are 3 others who have been injured. The names, details will be informed only after the next of kin have been informed. The rank of the Jawans or the officers who've been killed are not clear right now, and any moment now there will be an official statement. I think the delay is only because the operation is still underway, and the senior officers of the Northern Command and the White Knight Corps would have been now involved in the operations that are underway, because it is the area is dark and it is a difficult area to operate in. The main target would be the terrorists, to flush them out completely and neutralize them. So the operation is still underway, even as the casualties have been confirmed.
General Meston, very bad news, 3 injured and 3 people killed.
Yeah, Karthikeya, very, very bad news indeed, and 3 of our soldiers have been martyred. In fact, that's how I commenced when I was telling you that those inputs have come. It is very, very sad, and losing Jawans and officers in such operation. Yes, as soldiers we do feel bad, and not only as soldiers, the entire country will be feeling bad about it, and of course our condolences are there. But now coming back to your question about the terrain, south of Pir Panjal. See, over here the thing is little different. Firstly, the entire these 3 areas which I mentioned, Rajouri, Poonch and Nowshera, you know, you have huge mountains or hills that is describing the line of actual control. Now coming down further, supposing there is Nowshera city, it's a very, very small, and thereafter again there are huge mountains and ranges and hills, very thick foliage, very dense. So therefore the entire area inwards in the hinterland is only mountainous. It is totally jungle, thick jungles, ravines, nalas, and therefore the operation for these terrorists become much easier. Now coming on to the deployment pattern of the Indian Army, most of the regular battalions, they are deployed on the counter infiltration grid along the entire ranges. Reason being, because once the army is deployed there, the intent is to prevent any infiltration. But nevertheless, there are some terrorists who managed to get in, I told you, because of the dense terrain. And once as a commanding officer in 2002 in the same area, I did actually an exercise where I myself, when we were just inducted, we deployed the whole battalion, and I just played the role of a terrorist and 2-3 of my men, and in broad daylight we could cross over. So what I'm trying to say is, because of the dense foliage, dense jungles, very, very thick area, it is possible for some odd terrorists to get through, and thereafter in the hinterland we have a lot of RA deployment. Yes, there has been some kind of force readjustment. So this is the deployment grid. We are not short of forces, but the terrain gives lot of advantage to the terrorists. Now why it is happening? Why it is happening in south of Pir Panjal? Now in the valley, north of Pir Panjal, the political ideology has practically finished or erased after abrogation of Article 370. If we understand this, this is what, if you see, Kashmir Valley has been relatively peaceful. The people are supporting the Indian system, the Indian constitution, they are happy. In the south of Pir Panjal, they are not trying to get this ideology over there, and the terrorists will fail. Reason being 2. One is, of course, they cannot do much of operations over here, and the second reason is the population over here. Like I was in the Nowshera area, there were large number of Sikhs over there, there were large number of Hindus there, and there were large number of Muslims. So therefore, they will also try to, put in a communal divide, but I doubt whether that will succeed. This was going on since 92. I operated as a young company commander. So their aim is to get that political ideology and keep the issue of J&K alive. This will not succeed. Isolated incidents will take place. The Indian Army is, of course, well prepared, well deployed, and I'm quite sure we will meet success. Yes, we cannot rule out such isolated incidents, because the terrain gives a lot of advantage to these people. And also the third factor is there are overground workers here. In my time also, I remember we caught some people, I
think that's very well put, General Meston, but it's just that I'm really running short of time, and there are breaks which I need to take. But the fact of the matter is, you have you have spoken about the overground worker, the difference of grid, difference of terrain. But the fact of the matter is that it's really very unfortunate that 3 of our men got killed and 3 of our soldiers have been critically injured. More photos will come out. We have blurred some of the photographs, not worth putting them on here. But the fact is, as very rightly put, this opportunity encounter that has taken place, I think it's time to think as whether there should be a redeployment or regrading of the entire place. Thank you so much, General Meston. But it's time for a short break. Please do not go away. I will be back with more data, more elements of this moving story which has happened a couple of hours ago.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
Home missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Makbul Bhatt's release.
गोली मारो और फेंक दो.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, yes, I ordered it.
And he never came home.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
So 3 people have died, 3 people have been injured. The encounter that has taken place in which the men in olives were attacked. It's a reminder that that strategies need to be rebuilt, rethought. On this, I am joined by Lieutenant General Rameshwar Yadav, former DG Infantry. A very warm welcome to you, sir. 3 people have died, 3 people have been injured. The sort of rise in attack in Poonch and Rajouri, and if I tell you the data, it's 50% of the terror-related deaths in 2023, sir. The attacks are less in the valley, but they have gone up in the Poonch and Rajouri district. How has this happened? You know, if this is a year's data, don't you feel that some sort of a correction should have taken place? If you know, it's a common knowledge that the troops had thinned down in the Rajouri and Akhnur sector, if it's a common knowledge that remobilization had taken place, why didn't the rethink take place?
Well, I can't comment why rethink did not take place. but movement of troops and the deployment is a dynamic process. It all depends on what is the kind of security threat that the hierarchy they envisage. And accordingly, troops are deployed and redeployed. It all depends where exactly we would like to keep the pressure on. Now you see in the current scenario, as far as Jammu and Kashmir, the J&K valley is concerned, in that valley, the entire valley has been blocked totally. It is becoming difficult for infiltration to take place. So therefore, possibly Pakistan is trying to infiltrate the militants prior to prior to the winters, wherein all the passes are going to be blocked in Valley. So they want to make their presence felt, and this is how they are trying to induct more and more militants here before December, before January and February.
Is it a problem of grid, sir, or is it a problem of topography, which makes Rajouri and Poonch slightly different from the other sector?
Topography is very, very difficult. They're very high hills, and the gradient is 70 to 80 degrees if you operate in these areas. And it is very easy for militant and their supporters to identify in case the army is coming or the vehicles are moving. So it is comparatively easier in this area vis-a-vis Valley. In Valley, the areas are plains by and large. Wherein in this area, south of Pir Panjal, this area is very rugged area.
Okay, but do you feel that there's been a concerted effort on part of the Pak-sponsored terrorists to operate more intensively in these areas and not in Kashmir Valley?
No, their intentions are they continue to be in the valley because that is the center of gravity. Only thing is, it is becoming more and more difficult to infiltrate in the valley. Therefore, what they do, they infiltrate south of Pir Panjal, which is comparatively easier to infiltrate. And thereafter, from Surankot and Kalakot area, they go into the valley, closer to Banihal Pass and all those areas. So their intentions, to my mind and my analysis, continue to be induct these militants in the valley so that they make their presence felt in these areas. And if you look at the big picture, what is happening after evacuation of 370 article, the entire valley, there's a lot of development, and the mindset of people is changing. There is a paradigm shift in the political culture there. So this is going against the agenda of Pakistan. So they have to do something sensational so that the morale of their militant that goes up, and at the same time they see to it that Indian army is kept on the back foot. So these ambushes, what you saw in April earlier, there were 10 casualties. In November again, there was an ambush and there was an operation in which 2 officers died and 3 Jawans died. And today, once again, it is the same pattern that you have found, that Pakistan has done the trick and they are trying to inflict more and more casualties on Indian army.
So are we saying, sir, that the theatre of operation in Kashmir has radically shifted from the valley to the Poonch, Akhnur and Rajouri sector? Is it correct to say that?
No, it may not be, because the ultimate objective of Pakistan continues to create disturbance in Delhi. And this is a route, is a more convenient route for them to infiltrate and thereafter get into the valley after crossing the Pir Panjal.
After crossing the Pir Panjal. But in your opinion, what should be done, sir? For a common viewer, what are the changes which must be introduced in the system to correct this, if I may use the word, imbalance?
You see, unless we have the entire data and an entire situation, then only we can comment clearly. Otherwise,
what would you have done? So let me put it like this, what would you have done?
What needs to be done is reassess the entire situation and get more and more intelligence across the border as well within our own area, and thereafter take a call. What should be the redeployment if it is required, and what should be the SOPs and drills which are required for the movement of troops in these areas, because these areas are very dangerous. And when you launch an ambush, one of the objective is to create insecurity in the minds of the troops who are moving on these roads, which entails clearance of these roads by road opening parties, and at the same time the movement has to be slow. That requires more and more, large number of troops. Probably one of the objectives may be to create insecurity and thereafter create a imbalance in the troops which are being deployed there. However, to answer to your question, unless we know the complete situation, the complete deployment, it is very difficult to say what needs to be done. What can be done is more vigilance, more intelligence gathering in these areas, so that we make these areas more and more secure.
Is it correct to say that the number of overground workers in these areas are far more than the one they operated in the valley? Is it correct to say that because of the?
No, I don't think that will be a correct assessment. Yes, overground workers are everywhere in J&K. Only thing is the kind of development that is taking place, and there is a paradigm shift in the way people are thinking. They are opting for a development, and which is a reality. If you go to Srinagar today, the Srinagar is a totally different town altogether. The kind of infrastructure that has come up, the number of tourists who are coming in, Indian as well as foreigners in droves, they are coming in there. So entire scenario is changing. So that is something is not of liking of Pakistan. So they have to do something to destabilize this kind of a situation.
But it just brings me to the issue. It seems that the revocation of Article 370 worked far more smoothly in the valley, and its important aspects are not touching the lives of the people in this part of the region. It's like this, the one part has done well, and maybe the other part is lagging behind.
I don't think that would be a correct statement. I think development is taking place in the entire J&K. You see in Jammu region, Poonch, Rajouri, there are also a lot
development in Kashmir Valley has taken place. I completely agree with you, sir. Last time I went, I have seen multi-story apartments, a place where everyone would have a house. To see multi-story apartments, anyone who has served in Kashmir, worked in Kashmir, traveled to Kashmir would say that this is something very different, and I've seen those multi-story apartments. And not only that, the sort of infrastructure that has come up, the renovation of the cities that have come up is completely outstanding. And you just need to go to any part of the Kashmir to find it full with the tourists. But that sort of the flow in terms of tourism and other things, I don't think it's there in Rajouri, Poonch and Aktur. They're not very developed tourist sectors like the Kashmir Valley. I don't think so. Doda, though they are very beautiful.
You see the Poonch, Rajouri, the border districts, all right, and they have that as a tourist potential is concerned. If you compare it to Doda, Kishtwar, and areas around Banihal, and in Valley, they are certainly lesser. So accordingly, you will find lesser number of tourists going to these areas. So it is not that government is not doing. Government is trying to improve the infrastructure, trying to bring in schools, colleges, medical colleges, engineering colleges in all these areas. The new industries are also coming in. So therefore, government is very focused. They want to bring in a paradigm shift in the entire state as such, and all the three regions that you have, Leh, Ladakh, in the valley, and also south of Pir Panjal.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for joining me. And to our viewers, to sum this up, this attack shows that there are parts of Kashmir Valley which are still vulnerable. And despite the success of 370 in bringing a better life to an average Kashmiri, to an average person who lives in Jammu, Pakistan continues with shenanigans of undermining and disturbing peaceful civilian life in Kashmir. More importantly, and I must reiterate this point, the data shows that the 50% of the terror-related deaths came from Poonch and Rajouri when it came to terror in the Jammu and Kashmir region. It's worrisome because it affects the morale of the army. It's also worrisome because despite the strengths, it shows the soft underbelly, the weaknesses. what we have been able to achieve in the valley through the grid system, through development, through integration. There are parts of Rajouri and Poonch, that sort of development or that sort of, because of the terrain, has not been actualized there. But then this story remains important because ultimately it's the men in olives who get attacked. I'm sure that there will be a follow-up, and all the terrorists, they will be taken to task by the Indian Army. It's something which should always remind us that despite all attempts by India, Pakistan continues to remain in a hostile and, I'm sorry to say, an enemy state. It's time to close my bulletin on point, but today I leave you with a very wonderful, poignant documentary made by News9 on 26/11. It shocked everyone. India that day realized its vulnerability when it came to resisting a terror attack. Umpteen number of books have been written, but this particular documentary is about Professor P.V. Viswanath, who was requested by the Jewish Chabad movement in New York to translate and talk to terrorists at the Narimar House, where the Mumbai Chabad Center was located. The negotiation ended tragically as the terrorists killed all 6 hostages, including the rabbi and his wife, who was 6 months pregnant.